Hi, everyone, and welcome to our latest monologue. This week, I'm going to try help shed some light on the nonsense that's going on in Dubai currently. I'm not talking about the rugby sevens. I'm talking about COP28, and it's a circus. It's a circus, and no one, the general public, seem not to understand what's going on. They think it's about environment. Delegations like those from Kenya think it's about having a good time, and they don't know how it affects our country. Now, this is what's happening. It's a blueprint for colonialism, and it's sort of reached ahead because the eastern world is starting to push back against Western hegemony. And there was a glimpse of it a few days ago when Sultan Al Jaber, the director of the whole shindig, pushed back to a committee of Western quote unquote elders who wanted to impose him to declare some deadlines on when fossil fuels will be phased out. And he told them straight up that it's not going to happen because phasing out of fossil fuels will mean us going back basically to the dark ages, to quote what he said, or living in caves is what he said. This provided for a moment of mirth, but there was truth behind that. Look, we can't do without fossil fuels. Let's get that off the table right off. We cannot and will not do without fossil fuels. And before all the environmental clowns start jumping up and down and breaking wind, thinking I'm a climate denier, let's look at the Western world. The United States does not have any timetable for phasing out fossil fuels. They never have and they never will. And this is why, because the oil industry is so tightly connected to US foreign policy, power, and the existence of the military industrial complex. The current US climate policy was put together during the George W. Bush era by his Vice President Dick Cheney, assisted by a close associate called Lee Raymond, who was then the CEO of ExxonMobil, an extremely powerful, almost like a state within the US state, an extremely powerful corporation. And basically, the policy they put together was that we as in the US must extract as much fossil fuels from around the world as possible and make as much money as possible while putting in place policies to limit other people's extraction of the same and earnings of the same. And that can be done in order to ensure US hegemony or global power without having to start wars every now and again. And that the tool they chose to do that is climate and climate change concerns. Climate change is driven by emissions and consumption patterns and levels. It's not by what you use, it's how you use it. It's not by numbers of people, it's by behavior of people. So back to the present. Lee Raymond left ExxonMobil. His successor was a gentleman called Rex Tillerson, who later on got appointed Secretary of State under the Trump presidency, further cementing this state within a state circumstance of ExxonMobil. So now, when we come to this present day, they've realized that the US have realized that they cannot have a hawkish person like Henry Kissinger threatening war and sanctions around the world to spread their power. They need someone who calls himself a climate ambassador, John Kerry, because war and trade sanctions have become obsolete tools. Climate is now the top most advanced tool for hegemony. So John Kerry can go around to Kenya Africa Climate Summit, COP28, telling people what to do, telling people to stop using fossil fuels, while the US continues with their untrammeled consumption of the same. I mean, this is what's going on even in Venezuela. After ExxonMobil got burned there, that's when Venezuela started having all these political problems with the United States. So let's understand this. It's a predatory policy that seeks to limit others while keeping growth going at the same rate in the areas where consumption is highest and emissions are highest. And to mitigate that, they're bringing this nonsense called carbon trading. And carbon trading is basically just a way to paralyze African nations, not to utilize our natural resources, which we are quite wealthy in, not to develop infrastructure, which we sorely need, not to use energy, which we sorely need for development. It's to keep us in the state where we are. And the instrument being used is this money that changes hands under the guise of carbon trading. Very little of it goes to the actual governments. Like there's a company called Blue Carbon has cut deals in Liberia, etc., where they take 70% of the money and only 30% goes to the Liberian government, and of that 30%, nothing basically goes to the people who live near those forests. And to trade this carbon trade, you have to show and demonstrate that you have a forest with no black people in it. It's simple as that. So we have to be removed from forests in order for them to be used for carbon trading. But back to COP28, a lot of the big talk around is about talking about renewables, and it's all about trade in futures of lithium, cobalt, etc. Trade in assets that exist under the very forests that they claim to want to protect, to remove emissions from the atmosphere. So what's it gonna be? Every country must make their own aims, and even down to individuals, we must do our bit. Plant trees, limit your consumption, limit your emissions, service your vehicle properly to avoid pollution, and don't discard solid waste carelessly. This is how we change the world. Listening to the nonsense that goes, and I repeat, it's the nonsense that goes on at global gatherings like COP28, is only induces paralysis, and all Africans get from it is a pat on the head. Not money, not any commercial gains, etc. It's a pat on the head, and they call you a good chap. They call you progressive. They call you a leader, Pan-Africanist, whatever, as long as you follow this nonsensical path to nowhere that we're being presented with. So wherever you are, ask your leader, what are you doing for this environment here? Environment by definition is local. My environment here right now is these trees and this house around me. And that's why I must do my bit to protect this, as my neighbor does his bit to protect his own. It's as simple as that. So let's get our heads back in order. Hopefully in the future, after Kenya government realizes that this is useless, we will have proper environment policies in this country that serve the needs and aspirations of our people, not the global hegemonic aims of people who are miles and miles away from us, in terms of geographical distance, technological advancement, consumption patterns, and destruction of the environment. Let's chart our own path. And in the next monologue, I'll talk a bit more about the technical details of this hegemony and how it keeps coming to us through the back door that is environmental policy. Thank you.